share with you some of the changes that were made to the board presentation since our last meeting.
All
And
right.
that was based upon feedback that
All right. Be good.
that was based upon feedback that we received from faculty and staff, administrators, and the advisory board, as well as the Board of Education. Then we want to go into, as you know, we sent out an FAQ. We really wanted to, one of our advisory committee members suggested we do a town hall, but our schedules are just so packed. For example, most of the people in this room have a meeting every night this week. And so our schedules were just so packed that we really couldn't find a day to do the town hall. So what we sent out in the Monday memo was another opportunity at least to provide us some feedback through an FAQ. Karen has gone through those, kind of synthesized. I'm going to ask that everybody mute, please. Karen has synthesized them and gone through the big questions. We want to share some of our responses with you and get some feedback on that. Also, when we do the presentation, the changes to the presentation, we think you guys are a really good gauge on something that may be missing, something that we can add or emphasize. Then we're going to go into your working groups. And I know you've not been in there in a long time, but we're going to go into working groups where you'll have an opportunity to provide feedback and guidance on those things that are still kind of lingering in each of the work groups. And then we'll come back out and report out. And then if we do a really good job, we'll be out by 7:40, 20 minutes ahead of time. Not quite sure. This is our last official meeting for first semester. But as you know, when we formed the group, we said we would meet throughout second semester. Right now, we're scheduled to meet once a month. If we believe after our first meeting in January, we need to meet twice a month, then we will schedule that as well. So if you could click on some of the changes to the board presentation. And Mike, I'm gonna have to say click because I don't have, since you're sharing the screen, could you make it a little bit bigger, please? Down here with the little plus sign. Okay.
Is that good enough?
That is good enough for me. I don't know about everybody else. So if you go to the next slide. So many of you were at the presentation or saw it when we did it for you. So you kind of know the format we went through. We didn't go deep a dive into the plan because everybody had access to the plan. And our hope was that they would read it. Would you go down? Next slide, the next one, and the next one. Okay, so since our last presentation, some of the changes that we made, and I'm going to say a lot of them came from this group. And so we are working on a dashboard so that as people go into our website, they will be able to see our current metrics and where we are and whether or not that means we're in fully remote, a partial hybrid, a full hybrid, or full in person, and they will see the current metrics. They'll also be able to, in that metrics, determine where we are with the county, where we are with local numbers and cases on campus, which is something I want to talk to the medical group when we break into the medical groups. But they'll also be able to access the Northwestern site where they could put in the zip codes for Oak Park and River Forest and actually learn how we go in and check on a regular basis to see where we are with regards to being staying on the adaptive pause and so forth. We also got some feedback from one of our community members that when we talked about the number of cases that constitutes an outbreak, it could be confusing when you say 5 cases. Now we really need to be specific And what that means, and I'm going to try to say this word again, it means those 5 cases that are epidemiology. Okay, Julie, can you say that word for me?
Sure, it's epidemiologically.
Thank you. Epidemiologically connected. So you can have 5 cases spread out throughout the building and not be an outbreak. But if they are, what she said, connected, then that's considered an outbreak. And that is defined by the Illinois Department of Public Health. Now, another thing that may change could be the exclusion tree. We were told today as superintendents that the CDC and IDPH were going to do some additional guidance on quarantining, but we don't have that yet. We also added that we will have an abbreviated freshman only rotation, which actually also came out of this advisory group, that since our freshmen had not been on site, that we should take advantage of bringing them on first. And so for the first, once we decide that we can go into a hybrid, the freshmen will be on site prior to any of our other students coming on site. That then, as you guys articulated, gives them an opportunity to really understand the building, get a little bit of the lay of the land. And we even talked about having an abbreviated schedule for them so that they can go through all of their classes. We also was asked to clarify what it meant by non-compliance with mask wearing and what that will result in terms of consequences. And one of our board members actually suggested that we have some type of form that our families have to sign when students who opt in for remote learning come on site, that this is what they agree to. We also added that face shields may not substitute for masks unless they are approved. That's a question we've been asked routinely. However, I will say that our SPED department has purchased the clear mask for our speech and language pathologists. So if they're working with their students, they have those. It was also suggested that we clarify that on-site students suspected of becoming ill with COVID must be picked up by a parent or guardian, and what that looks like when they pick them up and where they can actually go and pick them up. And then we updated the information about the individual classroom ventilation. You know, at one point we talked about HEPA filters, but there's a new, more refined and more effective process that is now being used, and that has been included in the plan.
And we did also add, Joylyn, that it was a late add today, so you it's in the board packet, but you don't have the latest version. We added detailed procedures for visiting the health services office that Julie Toretto wrote. So those have been added as well.
So those are the things that we've added to the plan since that time. When we're doing the presentation, we know that people want to hear, can you go to the next slide, Mike? We know that people want to hear more about the metrics. We're prepared to speak in detail about that. Next slide, Mike. This will go a little bit quick. The schedule, there's not much changed at this point, but I do know that there will be some explanation of what the schedule looks like, especially with the OPRNF.
Yeah, and Julian, if I could just really quickly add, this isn't a change to necessarily what we did before, but there was a request from this group last time we met to ensure that siblings are part of the same cycle, OPRF cycle, and that is something that we can do and we are working on.
We may want to add that, unless I skipped it up in the slide that talks about, we need to say that in the presentation is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Somewhere in the presentation, we need to note that because that has come up frequently. Would you go to this slide? Another thing that was suggested, I think it was Miss Anderson, I think. I may have been, or Misty Olson, one of the two of you suggested that we give parents 2 opportunities to opt in and out. And we give them the opportunity prior to them seeing the plan, and then once they've seen the plan. And so, as you know, it went out last week, We have already extended the deadline because we initially had it for the 7th. It's now been moved to the 14th. One reason, because we thought we could get a town hall in there. We can't, but it does give the parents who didn't have an opportunity to see the presentation at the November 19th board meeting to have an opportunity to see the presentation this week. It also gives them the opportunity to turn in the questions for the FAQ, giving us an opportunity to respond to them by this Friday so that they can make an informed decision on whether or not to opt in or opt out. So they're in their second chance now. What we know we have to be clear on, just as Greg indicated, parents asking to have their children in the same cohort. I mean, the same cohort. We have to be clear on there is no opt in and opt out, back and forth, because we've received questions asking that. Well, if I start on an opt out, can I then opt in? Well, that kind of throws the numbers off. Okay, you want to go to the next one?
Can I jump in? I'm sorry, this is
Sure.
Misty, real quick. One of the things that I did hear come up, and maybe it's been addressed, is parents wondering what happens if their student has to go on quarantine. So if they're in person, do they get to then be remote for 2 weeks and just kind of opt into that? And then can they come back in person? That's something I've seen show up on like kind of the Facebook groups a little bit. So I don't know if it's worth talking about those specific situations of if they have to quarantine, what they do.
And I know we talked about they have to come back with a release of isolation form.
But they will be able to be remote learners doing that 2 weeks.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, apparently some schools do not allow that. So
they can't be remote.
no, they can't be remote. It came up in one of the Facebook forums the other
Wow.
day, and it was a question of clarification that came up. So might just be worth noting that.
Actually, that was not a question that was submitted, so I'm putting a note to myself, Misty, I'll add that to the FAQ.
Awesome. Yeah, that just, the OPRF parents Facebook
Yeah.
forum. So
That's
that just
good
jumped
to
out there.
know. I'm
Yeah.
surprised that a school would say no.
I know it's not, it was like a random school in Texas or something, but the
Wow.
parent had the question of what happens during that time. So, all right, sorry.
When you go up to the health and safety protocols, and I think what, we're still looking into the saliva screening. And so I am going to kind of talk about that a little bit in the medical groups, but I've looked at Shield and I've looked at Safeguard. Safeguard is the one by Dr. Campbell and Shield is the one out of U of I. And looking at the school districts and how they've gone. So we'll have a more in-depth conversation that we can report out on when we come out of the medical group. And we will also have the app. That's we talked about that the last time. That's our certification process. But I know that Mr. Yamashita and Ms. Olson did a walkthrough of the building and had an opportunity to see how the rooms are set up and some of the signage. And so I don't know if when you're in the facilities group, you may want to add some suggestions or things that you saw. You want to go to the next slide? The next slide. And so then we'll just talk about the next steps. As I said, we've extended the day for turning in the opt-in, opt-out commitments from families. We are working vigorously now that we've gotten rooms pretty much. We know what rooms and what the capacity for rooms can be. Dr. Fiorenza is working with division heads. And so it's our hope soon to be able to determine the groupings. In our Monday memo, we told parents that they would know at least prior to January the 19th, because that's all tied to the master schedule. We're constantly monitoring the metrics and we will use the science to determine the date we will begin. That'll be our presentation. That's a 25,000 foot view. Are there any things based upon what we said or anything that we may have missed that as you are hearing parents or that you think we need to emphasize so that parents understand? We realize we're going to have to emphasize that when we come back to a hybrid, it will not be the way school was when it was full in person. It just won't be. And we get to ask that question quite often. So we'll have to explain that it'll be different. Students will have on masks, staff will have on masks, and social distance will have to be adhered to. But is there anything else that you think in our presentation we need to emphasize or add?
I think the other thing that I've seen a lot on the Facebook forums, and the big concern is the teachers are going to be wearing masks. So is that going to impede the at-home learners from hearing and understanding? So it seems to be a pretty big concern that, again, that just the quality of the communication will be impacted. So to the extent that anyone's practiced or done anything with that, that might be something to bring up. And then I think it's just the general concerns of everyone wanted to know if the teachers would be in the classroom, because I think there was some concerns that the teachers would still be remote and the kids were in the classroom. That's a question that came up a lot on the forums. And then just being concerned of how they would be able to interact with both the in-student and at-home students at the same time. And I mean, those are just going to be general questions, but
It will be different.
Mhm.
We are looking into supportive technology resources to support our staff, you know, microphones and things such as that. I'm trying to think the other thing you said. But the teachers will be, you know, as we work through accommodations, there will be some teachers who, based upon accommodations, will be teaching remotely. So I can't say to you in full transparency that every single teacher will be on site, because it depends on the accommodations. But our goal is that once we are in a hybrid mode, that our teachers who can be on site will be on site.
Will there be any way to share? I'm just thinking follow-up questions of knowing what teachers will or will not be on site. I don't know if that would impact a parent's decision, but that's probably something just to bring up, that say, you know, some teachers may not come back and people may want to know, you know, is that what makes that determination if they are on site or not on site? I can, just based on what I've seen, that could be something that if you could get ahead of that might be helpful.
I don't know, because we really don't want, I'm just going to be honest, we really don't want parents to start cherry picking.
Yep.
And by cherry picking, well, teacher A is going to be in, so I want to opt my kid in for this class. But teacher B is not going to be, so I want to opt out of that one. And
No, yeah.
so
I mean, they definitely can't do it. I mean, I can understand not opting in by class, but if a parent finds out that, you know, 60% of their child's teachers are at home remote, I don't, you know, again, it just depends on what that percentage looks like. Is it 10% of I know there was a board presentation in the past where there was 10% of teachers, I want to say, when you did that back of the envelope survey earlier, like 10% maybe had medical reasons, and then there was another 50% who kind of was under that other category.
That's why I would almost be cautious
Mm-hmm.
about publicizing something like that.
Gotcha.
Because I don't want somebody to assume, oh, so she's got an accommodation, because then that's a violation of their privacy.
Yep.
So I really would not want to do that.
Gotcha.
I see that Dr. Barbado put something in, and that's true. And it came up today in the steering committee. We really need to emphasize that, you know, that some in-person learning is safe and that we want our kids in school. We truly believe that they thrive when they're in school, and we are going to emphasize that.
Absolutely.
And we do realize and we recognize as an institution that remote learning does not work for everyone. So yes, we understand all of that. And there are studies to show that. Oh, okay. And when she says we can't make it 100% safe, but we'll do our best. Thank you for that comment. Anything else? Any comments? Okay, thank you. Then we're gonna go to the top, it says top 10 questions. It's more like top 12 questions. Karen?
Yeah, so we had about 40 people submit questions. Some of them submitted multiple questions. There was a lot of overlap in the questions. I would say that none of the questions were too surprising or out of left field. A lot of it really is about logistics and what is this going to look and feel like. So among the questions were, as I think Greg said previously, can students opt in for some classes and opt out for others? Will the metrics for hybrid learning be flexible if it's determined, hybrid is really needed for our school? And the response there is that we've built flexibility into these metrics. Like we say in the plan, they're guidelines, not hard and fast rules. And when we reach 3 of 5 metrics in a stage, then that prompts discussion about moving to a different stage. So unless something major happens during our discussion tonight, I think that we've built flexibility in. Another question is, what is the benefit to students of being in a classroom if they're all wearing masks, the teacher's wearing a mask, if they're gonna do like group instruction, you may have kids in the classroom who are on the Zoom with the kids at home. And, basically we know that kids are struggling with remote. We have grade data that shows the number of Fs have more than doubled compared to the past 2 school years. And when you disaggregate the data by race, it's even more extreme. So being on site is not going to be a panacea, but we expect that being able to be physically present in the same space will at least have social emotional benefits and alleviate some of the isolation and the increased anxiety and depression that students are experiencing. Then a lot of, like I said, logistical type questions about whether teachers will be in the classroom, what types of student and teacher-student interactions can we expect? And again, that goes to, things that we've talked about repeatedly, what it actually looks like in a hybrid classroom. A lot of folks wanted to know if my student has a study hall, a lunch, or another free period at the beginning or end of the school day, will they be expected to attend, or can they arrive late or leave early? And, our approach is when you're signed up for on-site classes, you were there for that whole chunk of time. You can't come and go from campus. The only exception to that really is lunch. That's why we've bookended the days with lunch periods. So a student can leave early or come in late if their lunch is first or last thing. Quite a number of questions about how we're going to figure out the rotational groups. How are we going to make sure that they're evenly balanced? It works great for first period, and then it all falls apart when everyone switches classes. We're actually using outside technical help to do the balancing for us to ensure they're as balanced as possible. Questions about if the school can accommodate a quarter of the student body, why can't students opt in for hybrid later in the semester? And again, that goes to the balancing. Like it's a Herculean task to balance things the first time around, and we can't be going back and upsetting the balance throughout the semester. Can you put siblings in the same cohort? Yes, we are going to do that. Will my student keep their current teachers, or will that change? Without final numbers, we can't say with complete certainty, but it is our goal to do everything possible to keep students with the same teachers as their current schedule. That is a very high priority. Questions about athletics. If my student chooses to remain remote only, can they participate in spring sports, winter sports? If the seasons are allowed to begin, yes, they can. If they've chosen remote only, they can still participate in athletics. And then some specific questions about particular classes. What will science labs be like? What about music classes? PE, how are we really going to ensure the safety and social distancing in PE? So those were really the the most frequently asked questions. Again, what we publish is going to be more complete than that. I'm really trying to answer just about everything everyone submitted, but these were the common questions. So I guess my question to the group would be then, and Missy, you already shared some of this, is there anything you're hearing out there on the street that we really need to address or clarify for folks? And I did note the things that you said, Missy. Cool. All right. Well,
All right, okay.
that's that. Thank you.
So that takes us to our breakout groups. And the assignment for the breakout groups is each members of the subgroups will be in the workout groups. And based upon that subgroup topic, there were some lingering questions from the last time we were in breakout groups. And then there's some lingering challenges for each of the subgroups that the discussion will be about getting some feedback and some insight from each member of this group to come back to help either move forward, help address a concern that may have surfaced for that subgroup. And so we've identified 30 minutes for each of the breakout groups, and then we will come back and report out. Instruction group, you want to report out?
Yeah, sure. We had a fabulous ratio of 8, well, I guess, you know, 1 teacher, 7 administrators, and Miss Anderson. And so we really did not select a person to share out the conversation. But I think it would be fair, I suppose, Ms. Anderson, if you want to talk, feel free, but I don't want to put you on the spot yet again if you'd prefer not to do that. So I'd be happy to summarize the conversation. I mean, we really, if you'd like to, I can.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
We had just a variety of kind of conversations about the common instructional questions that we're getting related to how labs will function, how we will see teachers' faces, the possibility of using clear masks, down to the concerns we have about technical issues in the classroom with microphones and speakers, and making sure that we have the right type of equipment in place for that. So Christine talked a little bit about the plans to enhance some of the tech equipment in all of our classrooms. We ended up talking at the end about some things that we haven't put our finger on yet in the conversations related to clubs and activities, really just down to when and where they meet and how it will function for them. Right now, clubs and activities, not sports, but clubs and activities are meeting before school and after school right now. But obviously that 8-hour slot won't work. And so how exactly will that work in a hybrid environment? And if a crew of students are able to come in, if they're part of that rotation to come into the building that day, can we in fact open the building up a little bit early to allow them to come in and participate in person, you know, for their club meetings and activities? And so those are things that are all just, you know, simple logistical answers, but we haven't worked through them. And so that's something we'll need to do in the next few weeks as we get ready for this movement. So there were a variety of other topics in there. If anybody thinks if I missed anything, feel free to fill in the gaps. But those are the biggest ones, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Equity.
Yes, so in our breakout room, we did not have any students, so it was just myself and Sarah having some conversation around student accountability, because I believe it was Amelia, you who brought up in our first meeting, how do we hold students accountable to following all of these safety protocols, right, around staying safe with COVID. So one thing that we had planned, or we're planning to do, I've already reached out to about 25 or 30 of our students across varying leadership groups, clubs, activities, sports captains, and so forth, to put together a social media campaign or public service announcements on how do students best stay safe in order to, work on helping us get ourselves back into the building. So whether it's, the mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing, not, gathering in large groups and so forth, just to mitigate the spread of COVID, we'll be putting that together. So we'll be using various platforms, whether it's social media, maybe even talking about pushing in announcements into or videos into the advisory space, just to keep that communication up. So we'll be working on that between this week and next week, and looking forward to launch some good information at the start of the second semester.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Staff and student training.
Well, we haven't nominated person to report out either, and some of our members had to leave. So I will summarize quickly what we talked about, and then if anybody else wants to jump in, please feel free. We talked, last time when we met, we talked about the importance of having some in-person training, because everybody is tired of virtual communications. But given the current numbers, that's probably not likely that we will be able to accomplish it. So we really shifted our focus today to talk about how can we deliver training that would be interesting and could reach student, and we obviously would be interested to hear student voice as well. But we talked maybe using very short videos that will be dedicated just to one topic, so that it's not too long and would hold everybody's attention. So topics like how to wear a mask properly, what does 6 feet apart look like, and also we talked about training that would be really useful for students. So maybe what does it look like entering the building? What do hallways look like? Because many students have not been in the building for a long time, so it does look different. So something that would be useful for them. As far as we talked about using social media to deliver the training. There was an idea of using a district Instagram account and possibly Snapchat, but we were kind of lost in the logistics of how to do it. We're Snapchat, as none of us were experts on that. And finally, is like, I think the consensus of the group was to ask our students, what do you think would be the best way to reach the student audience? So,
Is there anything else? I'm sorry.
no, I just wanted to like invite any students in the group if they wanted to quickly give us an idea. That would be.
Maeve?
I definitely think your idea of short videos that are separate is good, because attention spans of students are not going to last long. If you're given like a 10-minute video, they're not going to care at all. If we're showing these videos in advisory, we kind of have to be worried about how many students it's going to reach, because sometimes people in advisory turn off their videos, they kind of just join, and then they they aren't marked off on attendance. So that's gonna have to be something you're gonna have to work around. Maybe if you could do it during first period, I don't know exactly. I do think for videos, I wonder if you could do like choose student representatives of almost like showing inside of the school, like walking, showing the proper precaution for social distancing. Because I definitely think that's gonna work better than showing adults, because then I think students are gonna be like, well, it's adults doing it, who cares, or whatever. So
Actually, the plan, Maeve, we were gonna hope to get some student volunteers willing to come into the building and help us film that. So that's excellent.
Maybe
if you wanted, I could always
uh,
ask my student council on Wednesday if they're interested in anything like that, and then I could make some type of like Google form and share it with one of you.
Wonderful.
That would be wonderful.
What would TikToks be too corny? But I mean, based on my children's usage of TikTok, it feels like the most effective platform.
TikToks would be awesome, I think.
I think you just got to make sure that everybody knows what the count is on TikTok, because if we don't have one already,
Right.
that's going to be a whole new thing. You could post TikToks on the student activities account. I know that's one for like as a student that we check the most out of like the OPRF like accounts or whatever. And then there's always the student council one. So
Oh, see, I know something new. Well, thank you. You could probably do that Google form with Miss Sullivan.
okay, sounds good.
Operations, facilities and operations.
Yeah, I guess because I took the notes and I have been unable to share them, I'm going to have to report out too. Not that I'm complaining, mind you. We had a really good conversation and my notes are pretty copious. I'm going to try to summarize it as I go because I want to be sensitive to the time. So Misty described her report out from the walkthrough of the building, and she had a couple of good ideas, which I'll share with you briefly right now, about having a separate door for folks, for the students that either don't have a phone or haven't been able to complete the self-certification application to get that OK symbol on it, that they should come in through a special entrance, and we could basically then not hold up the other doors with students that haven't self-certified, and then they could have their temperature checked and the questions asked at that special door. And then this idea I thought was a really good one is designating entrances for students to come in the building near their first class, and then when it's time to leave the building, have an exit for the students near their last class. Again, the mechanics of that are to be determined, but I think that's a really good idea to try to eliminate congestion and having students traversing the whole building to get in and out. We then talked about Ron talked about the amount of time it would take. We estimated it would take to do the check-in of students, certification of students coming in the building, and given the number of doors and the number of staff, I'm not going to go through all of the details on that, but we feel we can comfortably accommodate the numbers we're talking about for the hybrid plans. We then talked about passing periods and restroom use. A lot of conversation about restrooms and how we would be able to manage them with enough supervision. And then the real issue of trying to get that number of students to use the restrooms during the passing periods. And I think we came away with a lot of good conversations, some good ideas. Staffing is going to be critical on that to make sure we have enough supervision. And we may have to consider not using the staffing period alone for the restroom use, because it's just the reality of it is it's probably not realistic to think you're going to be able to get all of that restroom use accommodated in a 5-minute passing period. Let's see what else we have here. We talked about having advisory periods. We're very concerned about that, given the track record of advisory periods and students not necessarily wanting to go there. So we're trying to figure out how we might manage that. There's a lot of concern about that, given the fact that we only have a 15-minute period. How we then would make sure that kids go to those periods. So we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. And I think that was about it. Question about having masks for students when they come in. If they don't have their mask, we absolutely will have them. Suggestions that the safety and support folks walking the halls have some masks, and even possibly having some extra masks in the classroom in the case of mask breakage, loss, or otherwise destruction. Team, anything I missed?
No, Mike, that was spot on. Really.
And for medical, Dr. Weber?
Yeah, thanks. I guess I was nominated. Just start off, what we heard in our group was that the commitment to get the kids back to in-person education is not some radical position by zealous pediatricians, but actually something that folks in the group really endorse. And our aim is to get the kids back to school safely for them and for the educators, because we really do value in-person instruction. And we don't want to lose sight of that even as we try to demonstrate caution with respect to the pandemic. To that end, we understand there's a robust set of measures that are in place, but Dr. Pruitt-Adams reminded us that we can't be held to the tyranny of those numbers. And as things evolve over time, they are, the language used, was there a conversation started? And we need to track those and understand, but to recognize that as we learn more about the pandemic and our own situation, that our outlook in terms of what that means may have to evolve as we go forward. We pivoted to a discussion about testing methods. There's 2 tests that are on the table under review. This is where we got cut off a little bit, so I'll invite my colleagues to jump in when I'm finished. But it may be hard to distinguish between the performance of those 2 tests, but I think what we can agree to is that the tests are additive. They can add to confidence. They can give us a degree of security. If someone comes and tests positive and then doesn't enter the school, that's a win. That's not a loss. That's not a problem. That's actually the test doing what it can. But I think I'd want to close with what Dr. Hines said, which I think is really maybe the wisest thing that comes of it, is whatever else we put in place, the entire effectiveness of our approach from a medical standpoint, and I think we'd submit to the whole endeavor, is folks' commitment to sticking to these practices that we're talking about. We have a really strong plan, and a plan that could allow kids to go back sooner than even our metrics are laid out for, but staying hard and fast to the notion of engaging folks to participate, whether with TikTok, education, incentives, or otherwise, is really going to be essential, independent of anything else we do. But we really want to be committed to getting the kids back to school as soon as it's safe to do so. But again, I'll offer, if anyone else from the group wants to add or refine any of that, but I hope I got it right.
I guess you got it right. So I just want to say, as we close out, I want to invite everybody to tune in Thursday for the board presentation. I want to thank you again. The information I heard tonight has been extremely helpful. I look forward to second semester and us being together again. But in closing for today, I want to wish everyone a very safe and happy, socially distanced holiday season. Wear your mask. Somebody told us we need to reiterate this. Wear your mask, wash your hands no less than 20 seconds each time, and practice social distancing. And if you need a hug, give an air hug. And with that, thank each and every one of you. You have been an amazing group, and I look forward to us continuing to work together second semester. Be safe and sleep well. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye.